Hello, revolutionary thinking. This is another interview in my long line, a series of interviews. And I think what you found with all the other interviews, my friends, is that there's a common thread. No matter whoever I talked to in any sort of work, whether they're an entrepreneur, a retired teacher, a radio talk show host, a person who got skills with a minimum wage job, a YouTube influencer, any number of things across all sorts of ethnic backgrounds and career levels. The common thread was that most of the learning that they got was not du- during their education in the education system. It came from other sources, whether their careers were creative, technical, or even in teaching in the schools themselves. So today I have Jim Hood, who is saying aloha to us from Hawaii. And Jim Hood is an IT consultant. So, Jim, would you like to talk to us about how you became an IT consultant and the name of your company?
Sure. Hi, Ariel. Aloha. And like Ariel said, my name is Jim Hood, and I am coming to you live from the Big Island of Hawaii. I've lived here since 2003. I grew up in Illinois, but I moved to the Seattle area for a few years after college. Like Ariel said, I am an IT consultant. I have a company named Mobile Computer Doctor. And the funny thing is I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in gerontology, but the skills that I use every day in my IT consulting career, I actually picked up at a minimum wage job working for the university in the English department. I was just helping people with Microsoft Word documents and printer problems and things like that. Eventually learned how to diagnose and repair PCs. And then when my wife and I moved here in 2003, I found that those were the skills that were in demand in my little town, as opposed to what I'd studied in college.
I see, Jim. And would you mind telling us how were you as a student in school? Because I know it's funny. A lot of people stereotype people who are in IT or in computers as very emerald, very dry. For those of you who don't know what emerald is a very tech-oriented personality. They look at the facts, the figures, and the numbers, and yet some people think that kind of on the other side of emerald there's sapphire. These kind of personalities, they like to party, they like to have fun, and they like to do interesting things. But you can have one person who's both who can both wants
Right.
to look at the technical things and all the little details, but at the same time likes to party and have fun. So how did a sapphire personality like yours do in the education system and
Well,
things?
okay. I mean, I always got good grades, but I had to work for it. I wasn't one of those naturally talented people, and the same actually applied in college, where I did have to study hard to make my grades. I actually did have to take a math class over once. That's the only class I've ever had to take over in my life was a college level math course. And the funny thing is my personality. So I was a psychology major, and my personality tends a lot more toward that than it does the IT. I joke. I like to say that I thought I wanted to become a psychiatrist, but the only psychiatrist that I was familiar with was Dr. Fraser Crane from the TV show Cheers. So I essentially went into the idea of studying psychology without knowing anything at all about what it would take to become a psychiatrist or what their day would be like, things like that. And so I just kind of slogged through my 4 years of psychology training, but I really enjoyed what I was doing working with the computers at the school. But in keeping with the Sapphire personality, my job was I was a lab monitor. And so essentially they sat me at a desk at a little stool out in this common area. And there were like 300 or 400 people in all these different classrooms. And essentially they would just come out and ask me questions. And so all day I was interacting with people, helping people, and I was helping them with the computers. And so that's kind of what I'm doing now. Most of my clients are baby boomers or retired. They're technophobic. They didn't grow up with it, so they're not as comfortable as some younger people are, or they've got enough income and resources that like, oh well, I don't want to figure that out, so I'm just going to hire Jim to do it for me, essentially. So yeah, I'm not really an emerald at all. I actually use so Richard taught us the emerald and the sapphire and all of that. I actually use another system where they use birds, because I find them to be easier to remember. And so the emerald would be an owl, kind of studious, and the sapphire is a parrot, kind of fun-loving. I see myself as more of the parrot, but I also have a little bit of pearl in me, which would be the dove in bird speak. And so that's where most of my energy is coming from, is that sapphire, really enjoying interacting with people, and that dove concern for wanting to help them out. And I have just enough of the owl in me to actually do the tech work, but without geeking out too much. If I had to do really, really intense things like databases or that wouldn't interest me at all. It's more the people aspect, the people using the technology, than it is the technology itself.
I see. So that's where the passion is, to
Yeah.
help the people using the technology. And for those of you who never heard, Pearl is the more friendlier, loving side of people, and Ruby is that some say it's the opposite of Pearl, but you can be a Ruby and a Pearl. It's just that you like to get down to business. You don't like small talk so much, and you want to do the things like, okay, what's going on here? How can this get done? And let's do it as soon as possible. But some people have that to varying degrees, and it all depends. But some, yeah.
Right. Yeah, in bird speak, the ruby is the bald eagle. If you imagine that big
Yeah.
charge kind of, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't have much of that in me.
Okay, yeah, and sometimes it's there are times for that, and there are times where you want to be friendlier and you want to have a little fun. So the Ruby kind of thing, Rubies can turn some people off.
Right.
It all depends. Yeah. So that's interesting. This psychology that you're studying, was that something that you always wanted to do, or was it told to you by your parents, or?
I thought it was something that I wanted to do. I've always had an interest in helping people, and I thought that maybe I wanted to be a counselor, which is why I went into psychology. But unfortunately, and this is something I try to teach in my online course when I'm helping students, figure out what they want to do, college and career-wise, is the school that I went to was much more research focused. And so you have programs that are much more about actually doing counseling with people than you have programs that are more about doing psychological testing. They run rats through mazes and stuff like that. And that's what my school was like. And unfortunately, I didn't know that. I didn't know enough when I was picking out my college to pick the kind of school that was actually going to teach me what I thought I wanted to learn. So about 3 years into my psych degree, I'm like, this really isn't all I thought it was going to be. And, I would have had to get a master's and a doctorate in order to practice. And I'm like, I can't imagine doing this for like 5 or 6 more years. And so hitting my junior year, it was just like, okay, I'm just going to stay the course and I'm going to get out just so I can at least graduate. But when I graduated, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with myself. And so I did what a lot of college students do, is I said, hey, graduate school, that will put off the real world for a little bit longer. Unfortunately, the master's program I picked was only like 15 months long, which is awesome because I got a master's in 15 months, but then it didn't delay the real world for long enough. And I started to go out and make the decision. And I continued to put life off after that. My wife and I met my wife volunteering with Habitat for Humanity for a year out in Seattle, which is how I got from Illinois to Seattle. And I wasn't sure what to do with myself after grad school, and I still had this desire to help people. So I thought, oh, cool, I'll sign up for AmeriCorps. I'll work with Habitat for Humanity for a year and contribute to society in that way. And so that's what I did ultimately.
I see. So how much did the university cost back then? Like, did you graduate with any debt, or what happened?
I did graduate with some debt. I went to Illinois State for my undergrad and Western Illinois for my graduate. Luckily, I had a graduate assistantship, and so graduate school was free. That was awesome. Undergrad at the time, for room and board and tuition, it was about $10,000 a year at Illinois State. And I just looked last year, and now the same thing is $28,000 a year, which is insane. I graduated with about, I'm thinking, probably somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 worth of debt. I can't remember. One of the benefits of AmeriCorps is you put in your year of service, and they gave you a chunk of money to pay off your student debt. And so I think that was like $4,000 or $5,000. So that helped a lot. But I did still, graduate with a decent chunk of debt, especially considering that I've actually never used the degrees to this day.
That's interesting. And you think that the price has gone up to the university that you went to, that the quality has gone up too, but you think that the quality has just stayed the same, or is it that much
Right.
better?
I haven't been back to the school in forever. I'm going back to Illinois to visit family next month, but the school's 3 hours away, and like,
Right.
I would imagine that from what I've just in general am understanding, quality overall has kind of gone down. Where college is like a business, and the students are the customers, and students don't want bad grades. So ultimately, I think college has probably gotten less challenging, less rigorous over the years, and students are learning less because they've kind of dumbed down the curriculum, because students unfortunately aren't as capable as they used to be, because they're not even graduating with high school with the skills that they did 40 or 50 years ago. But then we've got this environment now where students don't want bad grades, and if they get a bad grade, they go into their professor and they complain, and they've got all these websites where you can rate your professor online, and you can just tear them a new one, leave them a bad review. And so I think I was just listening to a podcast about this yesterday, about grades being inflated, to keep students happy. An interesting thing that they said in what I was listening to is that employers are wise to this. They know when they're looking at their candidates, they're wanting to see actually more of what their tangible skills are, rather than what their grades were, because they know that their grades aren't necessarily reflective of what the student's skill and aptitude is.
Huh. So what was the allure of Hawaii from Illinois, of all the states?
Well, can you imagine?
Right.
Hawaii is like, it's the impossible, especially for those in the Midwest. It's like the impossible dream. Like my grandparents came to Hawaii for their 50th wedding anniversary. They saved their entire lives for a trip to Hawaii. And so my wife and I were living in Seattle. We got jobs after we finished with Habitat for Humanity. We were working in those jobs for about 3 years. The economy was going to crap in Seattle because the dot-com bubble had burst, and we were about to be laid off. And so my wife and I are like, well, we could either try to find different jobs, or we can ride out this thing on unemployment, or we can go and we can just have an adventure. We were in our late 20s, free and easy. We had managed to pay off all of our student loan debt. We didn't have any debts at all. We had some money saved up in the bank. We're like, let's just go have an adventure. Let's go somewhere for a year and do something fun, and then we'll go back to Seattle and we'll resume our normal suburban lives. And Hawaii just kind of came up. We'd subscribed to a magazine called the Caretaker Gazette, which advertises opportunities all over the world for you to go and do some type of caretaking opportunity. And the one that we liked the most, and the one they wanted us also, was this place in Hawaii, this off-grid goat farm here about 2.5 hours from where I am right now.
Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting. So from Illinois to Hawaii, and so when was it that you got really deep into the weeds of what the education system is really doing to people and how it's doing that to people? What did you stumble upon that opened up this door for you?
Well, it was for me, it was a really slow awakening. Like back when I was living in Seattle, I had a sense that there was just something not right with the way the education system worked, with the way that the world worked in general. but I couldn't put my finger on it. And, and all of the teachers that we follow now, like Rich and Brett and all those guys, they hadn't even started with their research yet. And so that was part of the reason I actually moved to Hawaii, is because I wanted to remove myself from that environment, that suburban, 24/7, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. So I could have some time to really think about who I was and what I wanted out of life, and what was kind of going on here. And slowly throughout the years, I learned more things. Like I saw a documentary about 9/11. Then I saw a documentary about taxation. And then I saw Zeitgeist, if you're familiar with those documentaries. And they just slowly opened my eyes. So I was gaining this like background of information about this, but it wasn't until 2015. It was the month after my daughter was born that a client of mine just sent me an email, said, "You should go to this webinar." And I went to the webinar, and I found that it was intriguing, and that just kind of led me down the rabbit hole. The webinar introduced me to Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante, who's actually speaking at Red Pill next month. And then from his podcast, Anarchast, I learned about Brett Veinotte. I learned about Mark Passio. I learned about Richard Grove. And from there, I just kept following the breadcrumbs, basically.
Got it. And so, but the thing is that when you got your degree, were you actively looking for work with that degree, or was it just like?
No, I didn't. Yeah, I went for gerontology, the study of adult development and aging, working with elderly people, just because everybody else, like I don't know, 75 or 80% of psychology people are interested in working with kids. And I'm like, oh, well, I want to do something different, because, there's this giant baby boomer population. They're getting older. They're going to need something eventually. And so I'll get my degree in that, and I'll be able to work with baby boomer people. And I guess I made the discovery that a lot of people make. So when I was in graduate school, I did an internship with a organization that provided services for desperately poor old people. Getting them dentures if they couldn't afford to buy dentures, or helping them buy their medication, things like that. And I ultimately didn't end up following up on that work, because I was like, oh, well, so what I'm doing now is, some of my clients were in their 90s, and you're like, well, I'm going to get them some dentures, and they'll live for another year or two. At least they'll have teeth before they die, so they can eat. But it was making their final years a little more comfortable, but I was intervening too late to be of a huge help to them in their lives. I thought, boy, if I could actually intervene and be of some assistance with a person earlier in their life, I could potentially help them. So what I ended up choosing was what I wrote my online course on, Test Drive Your Future, because we've got probably 3/4 of all kids who are graduating from high school now going into college, and then they're graduating with these huge debts, and most of them aren't working in their majors. But it's an awful way to start out in life. You come out of high school 18, you're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to conquer the world, and then you go to college for 4 years and you work your butt off to earn a degree that isn't going to make you any money. And then when you get out, you've got so much student loan debt that you can't afford to live on your own, so you need to move back in with your parents, or you can't find a job in your major, so you end up working as a waiter at Applebee's or something like that. And when can you ever
Right.
start your life, because you've got so much debt and so little income.
Well, they called the generation the boomers. Now they're calling my generation the boomerangs.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, because they're coming back. And the really perverse part of all of this is that they're getting blamed. That they're told, well, you shouldn't have chose that major, or you shouldn't have spent all that money. But what were they being told their whole lives before
Right.
they did that? They were always being told to do the things that now they're being blamed to do it.
Exactly. Exactly. How dare you do what we told you to? Yeah.
Right, exactly. So there's that whole paradox over there. It's like I was told my whole life that this is what I was supposed to do to be successful in life, and now I'm finding out I should have done the opposite.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
And we aren't taught the critical thinking skills that we would need to assess that as we're going along.
Right.
Like, oh, why am I being told this? Who is telling me? Can
Yeah.
I project out into the future and see what my future would look like if I follow that path? We just
Right.
we hop on the treadmill, and then 4, 5, 6, 7 years later we hop off, and then
Mhm.
where am I? What am I going to do now?
So back in your day, were your parents telling you to go to university, or did they go to university, or?
They were telling me. So I was actually only the second person in my family to ever go to college. I had an uncle who went and became a teacher, but all the rest, I have 5 uncles on one side and 3 on the other. And I'm from Illinois, a very blue collar industrial area. And basically all of my uncles had manual labor jobs. My dad worked in a John Deere tractor factory for 35 years. And that's what I had assumed as a child I was going to end up doing too. But I was very much encouraged by my parents and my extended family. They're like, go to college and get a degree. That way you don't have to spend 35 years working in a junk factory, and so that's but unfortunately, because they didn't have a college experience themselves, they didn't know what to tell me other than go to school. There wasn't any advice that they could give me. And the advice they gave me was like, just go get a degree. To get any degree, all you have to do is have that piece of paper to prove to an employer that you're a good person and that you can be taught, and then you'll be okay. And that was probably true when my uncle went to college in the late 60s, but not so much true when I went to college in the late 90s.
And you're not even a millennial.
Right. Yeah, I'm
Right.
on the tail end of Gen X. So
Right, exactly. So even in your generation, which is even before the millennials, just think about the millennials getting the same advice from 60s style thinking.
right.
It doesn't tune, and not to mention with all the automation going on, and with all these factories automated, and all these robots, that we're not looking for people who can just follow orders anymore.
Right, exactly.
Because if you're trained to do what a robot can do, and if all you know to do is what a robot can do, you're going to be replaced by a robot.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And so where did you have the idea to create you call it the course? The name was not Crash. What was it?
It's the Test Drive Your Future.
Test Drive. Okay, driving. Okay, Test Drive Your Future. Yes.
Yeah. We wrote another book before that called Where's the Map? And that was the question, is like, I was not given a map to follow when I got out of high school that would lead me to success and prosperity. I was given some ideas, or they told me the map that I was given wasn't correct, I suppose. But then the idea for Test Drive Your Future kind of came out of that. And the premise of Test Drive Your Future, the reason we chose that title really is that we're trying to convey to students that you can't really know what it is that you want to do with yourself until you get out into the world and at least meet some people who are like, I wish I'd talked to a psychologist or a psychiatrist before I'd gone to college, to find out, what was your schooling like? What's your day like? How much money do you make? Can you live on that? Stuff like that. We say, you wouldn't go out to a car dealership and just, throw down 30 or 40 grand on a car without getting into it first and driving it around the block a few times. So why in the world would you go to college and spend $150,000 on a degree, not knowing whether or not you would want to use it? So we really encourage our students to get out there and mix it up. Talk with if you have 3 or 4 different careers you're exploring, talk with all those different people. See if you can get a good sense of what the career is like, and see what you would prefer.
Right. And I'm pretty sure in your course, do they have to take out a loan to take the course?
No. No, that's just it. I mean, honestly, people follow the advice in the course all the way through. They could potentially save tens of thousands of dollars by either not going to school at all if they don't need to. I don't need a college degree for what I'm doing. A lot of people don't. Or if they are going to get a college degree, you can know what you're getting into from the get-go. Most students, I think only about 30% are graduating in 4 years now. They're taking 5, 6, 7 years, And so that 4-year degree has ended up costing you $150,000, $200,000 because you change your major so many times because you don't know what it is that you want to do. So we're like, figure it out before you go. And then you've got a much straighter, narrower, quicker path.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just like when the whole reason that stores give out samples of foods is so you'll know how something tastes before you buy it. If
Right,
you don't,
exactly.
if you don't like the taste and you buy the whole dish, now that's just what that'll cost you at a restaurant, maybe like $50, but not $50,000.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's cool. Did you create the course with your wife or by yourself or you
Uh,
collaborated?
with my wife, yeah, yeah. So it was originally a book, and the book came out in 2010, and we had it up in Amazon for several years selling. And it got to the point where the book, there were a lot of websites suggested in it and links and things like that. And it got to be pretty out of date. And so we were like, okay, well, we could either like recreate the book, or since nobody's really buying books anymore, we could just convert the book into an online course. And that way we can add a lot more to it. We can have interactive elements, and we can update it on the fly as things change.
Right. And this is not the course isn't something where people are going to get F's and D's and
No, no, no. It's essentially a self-guided course. It's
right.
a journey of self-exploration where people really figure out who they are, what they want out of life, what makes them tick,
Mhm.
and then there's that. I mean, we really want people to find that sweet spot between
Mhm.
here's something I'm good at and I really like to do, and also here are some jobs that are available, because it's all well and good if you pick out something that you really like to do, but if you can't find a job doing it, then
Right.
that's no good. But if you also like, okay, well, I'm going to be a petroleum engineer and I hate oil and I hate engineering, but it makes a lot of money, and then you'd be miserable for the rest of your life. So it's trying to find that perfect
No.
balance of something I really am going to enjoy, that's going to meet my needs, but it's also something that's in demand in the marketplace.
Right, exactly. Like my biggest beef with our schooling system is that you learn so much, but you never learn who you are. I mean, sometimes they tell you to like write an autobiography or something like that, but
Mhm.
it's like, oh, what's happened to me? Okay, what's happened to me has happened to me, but what do I like? What do I not like? Why is that? And I don't know about you, but I think in school I was never gone the time to ask questions about myself. So what's more important in life than figuring out yourself?
Exactly. Exactly. Because yeah, I honestly believe we're here to enjoy our lives. We're not here to just work ourselves to the. I was just reading an article before our interview here about Alibaba, Jack Ma
Hmm.
in China, and he encourages people to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And he's getting a lot of flack for that because it's like you don't have any time to do anything. You basically you go home, you go to bed, you get up, you take a shower, you go back to work. And with our course, we're really trying to help people figure out, like I said, that balance of what they want to do versus what's available, and then to figure out what kind of lifestyle they would like to lead. I mean, we ask them a lot of questions about, where do you want to live? What kinds of recreational pursuits? If you're a skier, you probably don't want to live in Kansas, stuff like that. Figure out
So
where you want to,
get all your ducks in a row.
pretty
I mean
much.
like a military strategy is before you fight a war, you got to know about where the enemy's coming, what are their supply lines, what's happening, what does the battlefield look like.
Exactly.
It's like nobody is going to say, okay, here we're going to give you a few swimming lessons and then we're going to throw you in the middle of the
Right.
Pacific Ocean.
Right.
It's like
Exactly.
right. It's completely unreasonable to not have that information before you go and you figure out your path in life or how you're going to make money for the rest of your life.
Right. And you figured that out now, a few years, you're in your late 20s.
I just turned 30.
Oh, okay, right on.
Yeah.
And yeah, it took me a while to figure all that stuff out too. But the way our whole system's structured is we're taking these 18-year-olds who know absolutely nothing, about who they are, what they want out of life, or how the world works. and expecting them to make these giant life-altering decisions, which involve, years of study and possibly crippling amounts of debt. And they just have absolutely no idea what they're getting
Right.
into or why. And it's really, I was talking with somebody about this the other day. I'm like, I don't want to think that it's predatory, yeah, but it seems kind of predatory. Um,
It looked like being a high ticket closer myself. I can't just tell if someone's going to invest a large sum of money, and we're not even talking about a university education, which is
right.
which is even more than any high ticket products that I've ever sold. Like I can't tell them, here, give me $3,000, and then when they ask me why am I giving you this money, I say, oh well, you'll find out later.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but what does the university system do? Don't worry about spending the money right now. We'll do it later. And then that later comes, and they're in this whole mess, and they're in this big hole. And I don't know. It just seems like common sense and logic has flown out of the window at that point.
Exactly. And that's what I really think my mission and purpose are in life, which is why I've continued to pursue launching Test Drive Your Future. Is I mean, I love my IT work. I've been doing that for 15 years. I've got great clients. I make a good living, but I really feel like I have more to contribute to the world. And
Right.
there's this huge problem out there. I mean, there are 4 million young people who are graduating from high school every year. And a vast majority of them are going into the system. They get, sucked in when they're 18 and spit out when they're like 22 to 25. And by then it's just a little too. I've actually did some coaching last year with some people who are who I called myself the relaunch coach. And it was people who had graduated from school and then had to move back home with their parents because they couldn't make it. But some of these people had some serious problems and some serious trauma, and they were really, really stuck. I mean, when you've got a 4-year degree in philosophy and you can't get a job with it, but you've got a $800 a month student loan payment, and your job only makes $1,500 a month or something like that. I mean, what do? You're stuck. And I was trying to help these people last year, but it was tough. It was really tough. And ultimately I found that my passion is more, I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if we could catch these people 5, 6, 7 years sooner, and try to prevent them from getting sucked into that system and
Right.
spending all that money, rather than trying to, do trauma care after the fact.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the best medicine is preventative medicine.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's why they talk about healthcare. It's like it's much more expensive to have the ER come over when things have gotten out of control than to have, well, let's take dentists for example. You brush and floss your teeth. It's much less expensive than getting like 5 cavities down the road and a root canal and an
Exactly.
extraction, and you know what I'm talking about. It's yeah. So if we monitor that before, I mean, what better time than when you're young and you don't have a family, you don't have a car payment, you don't have any loans, you don't have a house, you don't have anyone to provide for, to find all this stuff out.
Right.
Then thing. But do the high schools ever do that? You know what, kids? Let's put Shakespeare on the side. Let's put trigonometry on the side. Let's put algebra on the side and talk about how the world and money works.
Right.
So
Hey,
you're not, it never does it. It's just common sense to me.
right.
Yeah, but I mean that's what we see. We see that it's like we put these kids in these incubators where but like adults are like, no, they're too young to know about what's out there in the world.
Right.
But believe, when I was young, I was like, no, I'm excited. I want to find out what's
Yeah.
out there, how things work, why they work. And it's better to have these experiences now than to come out with a debt and to come out burdened,
Right.
you know.
Isn't it funny, when they're 17, they're too young to know, but when they're 18, we just pick them up and throw them to the wolves, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And there's something in life, and it's called a transition period.
Right.
That employers used to train their employees. Now they just expect them to know. It's like, how can you be ignorant enough not to think that somewhere a transition period has to happen?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You just,
We don't have that, and we don't have a rite of passage for young people anymore. It's really, really crazy. One of the more interesting things that I really got from Gatto's work was the idea of the idea that adolescence was created. That but for
hmm
all of human history, that was something that didn't exist.
yeah. I mean, if I was like, I'd rather not have went to even middle school, just got my basic grammar, logic, and math and all that stuff done in like fifth grade,
Right.
and then take me to a store, take me to a shop, show me what are these employees doing, what
Right.
are these CEOs doing, why are they doing it, how do all these systems work, instead of what here memorize all of this and just repeat it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You
We
know,
switched to absolutely nowhere. Yeah.
right,
Absolutely nowhere.
right. That's amazing, and that's why one of the reasons that you don't want your kids going through that system, because you saw the like kind of like the faults in it when you were going through it, and it kind of was an epiphany once you got through all that stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I had a sense that there was something, but I mean, for the most part, I was pretty ignorant, especially when I was growing up. You know that, oh,
hmm
this, I'm just going through the motions in public school. I thought that's the way that it was, and I never ever really questioned it. And same with college. Coming from that background where I had my blue collar family saying you must get a college degree to escape our fate. I saw that as being the ticket out. But it didn't live up to all the promises, I guess is what I'm getting at. And so now
Right.
that I'm a father and I've got a young daughter, I'm wanting to do things very differently with her.
Right. And what are the other Hawaiians? Are they kind of noticing this, or they're kind of going through it like the community that you're in?
Well, it's interesting. Our area does have a large homeschooling community. Um, and but part of that is that the public schools, unfortunately, in Hawaii are the second worst in the nation. The only state that has worse public schools than Hawaii is Mississippi. Um, and it's known here that the public schools aren't great. So in my little town, we actually have two private schools. They're very good private schools, college private schools, but they cost $15,000 and $22,000 a year. I mean, can you imagine spending $22,000 to send your kid to kindergarten?
That's
Okay.
unbelievable.
Yeah, it's insane. And I mean, the curriculum is, I think it's more rigorous, but I don't know that it encourages any more critical thought than the public school
Right,
curriculum.
right. Look,
You
look,
know?
look, like even I've heard, Tony Myers.
Yeah,
When I did my interview with him, I think he went to these parochial schools, private, but even the private ones didn't teach critical thinking.
right,
So
right,
it's like it doesn't matter to me if they're private or public. I don't care what they are. I don't care where the information is coming from. I want to know, how does money work, and what's the best way of me making money and living the kind of life that I want to live without becoming depressed.
right,
I don't care who gives me that information or how much it costs.
right.
I
Yeah,
just want
yeah.
to know that.
There's nothing more valuable. Absolutely.
Right. And it's I don't have to pay a ton of money for that. I just need to talk to someone who's older, who has critical thinking skills, and who's doing something that I want to do. That's all I need.
Right. Yeah, just a mentor. You need a
Just,
mentor.
just a mentor, and
Yeah,
and if a mentor wants to charge me, I don't know, maybe like $200 a session, and I'm getting really good quality information, I rather that than pay a private school or university.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, we covered a lot of ground here, and we're figuring out how these systems are working, and if they're not working for us, like, why are we trusting them? So I just want to put, like, my final question like this: if you could have a chance and to talk to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give to
Oh man.
you're
Uh,
going back to talk to yourself when you're almost graduating high school. Let's leave it
right.
at that.
I think honestly, one of the things that I'm a big advocate for is gap year. And I really wish that after I'd gotten out of high school, that I had taken some time to go and live in the world and to live on my own. See what that's like, and to try to get myself close to some people who were doing what I thought I would have wanted to do at that time to figure it out so I could determine whether or not that was an actual path I wanted to follow. So that's something that we encourage in our course a lot is if you really don't know, if you aren't ready to go into a trade school or a university or something like that, go out into the world for a year. But there's this stigma about that in our society where people are like, oh, well, you don't want to stop because if you don't go to college right after high school, you'll get out of that student mentality and you'll never go back, and then you're going to die in a gutter. You know,
The student mentality has the way that the universities and the schools do the student mentality is the way that has actually been a detriment to me throughout
right?
my life. My best teacher has been my experiences. I said you're in Hawaii, and I just want you heard of hosteling?
Yes.
So I do hosteling and I love it. And I actually had a relative who lived in Hawaii. So when I went to Hawaii, I did this thing. It was Oahu, not the Big Island, the
Mhm.
Honolulu. And I did this thing, which is I bought a helicopter and submarine combo,
Right on.
and I had the time of my life. It was awesome. So my best teacher throughout my life has been my experiences where I was traveling alone and I had to deal with other people and I had to deal with money and I had to deal with like finding a place. And I like to say that I learned more about life through video games, which sounds
Oh,
kind of crazy
yeah, I get it.
than I did through school, because in a video game, think about it, it's a simulation. You're dealing with some games, these open world games, that you're dealing with resources, you're dealing with ways to marshal those resources, you're dealing with how do you talk to people in some kind of ways with these AI characters, where
Right,
do you go to get what you want? And that's the way the world works. It's
right.
just this open world where you're learning by doing and you're learning from your failures. And I just found that to be the opposite of our schooling system.
That's brilliant, Ariel. I think that's absolutely true. I missed that boat entirely. Being a Gen Xer, I grew up with the Atari 2600 and the original Nintendo console. So nothing
Right.
was. I mean, we were just jumping over fireballs and stuff like that. It wasn't anything as complicated as what you're talking about. But I
Yes.
totally get that, and that's the experience that you got traveling, and that's something that I never did. That's actually one of my biggest regrets. Because now I'm in my 40s, I own a couple businesses, I've got a small child, so I'm not going to be going off and traveling by myself anytime soon. And when I think about it, I'm actually kind of afraid because I've never done it. I'm like, oh God, what happens when I get off that airplane in that
Uh,
country where I don't speak the language? My wife did that. My wife actually studied in India for 4 months when she was in college, and it was the hardest, most grueling, challenging thing that she did. But she learned a lot from it. And we went to Europe for our honeymoon, and essentially, I let her drag me around. I didn't have to do much of the navigating or any of that. She's just like, here, I got this, and whatever. It's something I'd really like to do, and like going back to what you'd asked earlier, that's something that if I could talk to you, 17 or 18-year-old Jim, I'd say go out and have those experiences, do that, because that develops a huge amount of self-confidence. I mean, for you to drop yourself in the middle of a foreign country, you don't know the language, you don't know the currency, you don't know the customs, you don't know your way around, and you got to figure all that stuff out. And you spend some time, you figure it out, and you're like, yeah, I've got this. And you know what? I could do it again. But so few people have that experience. We stay in our nice little sheltered environments, very, very limited in how much we're able to move around and how much we vary our routines and our schedules. But I think people who have had experiences like yours are probably far better off.
Thank you, Jim. You know that's funny. You talk about a foreign country, and sometimes the language barrier is a big deal. But I don't know if you can see this. I have this app on my phone called Speak and Translate.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It has like 50, 60 languages on it. So when I was in Japan, I can just show you A B C D F G H J. I was in Japan. I could speak English into this here, and then it
Nice.
translates into Japanese. Let me see. Hello. and and then it says like konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. Yep. That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, when we went to Europe in 2000, and so there you go. Yeah, it was different. I mean, I haven't done much international traveling in a while, especially since the internet and smartphones. I mean, when my wife and I went, we had a paper guidebook in our backpacks, and they hadn't even introduced the euro yet when we were in Europe, so we were having to change money at every country, and just imagine how different that would. I had a buddy who took his wife to Spain for their honeymoon, and they're like, yeah, we didn't even book a hotel. We're just gonna go when we land. We're gonna go to the computer. We're gonna get an Airbnb and just get an Uber there. And I'm like, we were doing Eurail passes and trying to find hostels and completely different experience.
Yeah, but it's so fun to experience, and I think that's one of the things that the schools take away from people.
Yeah.
It's very it's like a repeat of the same thing every
Yeah.
day. There's no introducing any kind of complexity, any
Right.
kind of puzzle that you have to figure out, any kind of thinking that you have to do for yourself, and you have to see, I want to connect these things together, and how does it work, and how can I talk, and how can I use my mind to figure something out in real time. It's
Right. Yeah.
also controlled and linear, and when you get out of it, it cripples your ability to be resourceful.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
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 I think that's by design. We're supposed to get up and go to work every morning and bring home our paycheck, and we're supposed to purchase what is advertised to us on TV and on the internet. And we'll just be good little workers and good little consumers and good little citizens, and yeah, we're not encouraged to break out of that mold, to think for
Yeah.
ourselves, and it's up to us to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to have this interview. Like we have to learn that we have to do it.
Yep.
And the sooner we learn that, I think the better things will turn out for us.
Absolutely. And
Excellent.
we've got a lot of work ahead of us to raise awareness.
Right. But we can make it fun.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Jim, it's been a pleasure.
Hey, thank you, Ariel.
I'll catch up with you
Aloha.
later.